We're going to start with a few relatively difficult critical reasoning questions, but I'm going to go through how I would look at these questions and eliminate them. So if we start with question 104 here, so the play La Finestrina, now at Central Theatre, was written in Italy in the 18th century. The director claims that this production is as similar to the original production as possible, okay, in a modern theater. Although the actor who plays Harlequin the Clown gives a performance very reminiscent of the 20th century American comedian Groucho Marx, Marx's comic style was within the comic acting tradition that had begun in 16th century Italy. So the first thing to do is just figure out whether the argument works. So does this generally work? Well, we're looking at, okay, we've got a play written in the 18th century. Director claims the production is similar to the original production, 18th century. The actor gives a performance reminiscent of the 20th century comedian. But it's saying, because of the although, it's saying although Marx's comic style was within the comic acting tradition that dates to the 16th century. So what we have is we have the 16th century, and this is the Marx style. And then you have the 18th century, that's the play. And then you have the current production, which would be the 21st century. So what you're looking at is if the style goes all the way back there, then that matches the 16th century. That would go all the way through the 18th century. So if it was reasonable for the 16th century, and that's continuously been the case, then it would also work for the 18th century. So I don't think there's really a problem with the argument here. So it's saying the considerations best serve as part of an argument that, we're looking for something that doesn't necessarily have a flaw, basically. So modern audiences would find it hard to tolerate certain characteristics of a historically accurate performance. We're talking about whether the play is anachronistic or not, like is it in the right century? So it's not about whether it's historically accurate, it's about whether this performance of the comedian is reasonable. So it's not going to be that one, that's basically out of scope, we don't care about that. So Groucho Marx once performed the part of the character. I mean, maybe, but that doesn't matter, that's again out of scope, because we're talking about this performance and this actor, not Groucho himself. In the United States, the training of actors in the 20th century is based on principles that don't differ radically from those that underlay training of actors in 18th century Italy. This one is looking a little bit closer. That, again, it may be true, but it's not really about the argument that we're looking at, because we don't even know whether the actor here was trained in the United States. And we don't know whether the actor was trained in the 20th century. It's far enough into the 21st century that maybe that doesn't actually matter anymore, and so forth. I mean, there's different reasons why that wouldn't work. So that I'm going to put a leap. That's too much assumption, okay? So if it's too much assumption, if you have to look at it and say, well, if I think about it that way, then maybe, then that's going to be too much effort, right? It needs to click into place easily. This one, the performance of the actor who plays Harlequin does not serve as evidence against the director's claim. It's a double negative. What they're saying is the performance is consistent with what the director is saying. So the director is saying it's as similar as possible. Harlequin's performance is consistent with it being as similar as possible to the original production. And again, if you're going from this 16th century style that has kept the same through the generations, then yes, that actually would work. I'm pretty sure that's going to be your answer. We just have to eliminate E here. The director of La Finestrina must have advised the actor who plays to model his performance. There's nothing about the director's intention here, and that's not going to help anything. That's completely out of scope. So why don't we take a look at this next one? Okay. All right, so the cost of producing radios in country Q is 10% less than producing radios in country Y. Okay, even after transportation fees and tariff charges are added, it's still cheaper for a company to import radios from Q to Y than to produce radios in country Y. Okay, so what that's telling you, I mean, if it's 10% less, you do need to think about the transportation and the tariffs when you're importing things. So basically, if it's 10% less, if they're still saving money by importing from country Q, that means that whatever your tariffs are, by definition, or your tariffs and your transport, by definition, is less than 10%. If that is going to still be cheaper, okay? So it best supports which of the following assertions. I would look for something that's similar to that. so that our cost of tariffs, et cetera, should be under 10%. So labor costs in Q are 10% below those. That's a relative value. So it doesn't have to be relative. We don't need to know that. That's not going to be helpful. I mean, I'll call it out of scope. Why not? Importing radios from country Q to country Y will eliminate 10% of the manufacturing jobs. That's irrelevant. Definitely anything irrelevant is just out of scope for the argument. The tariff on a radio imported from Q to Y is less than 10% of the cost of manufacturing the radio. Okay, so that mathematically works. I think that's probably going to be your answer. The fee for transporting a radio from country Q to country Y is more than 10% of the cost of manufacturing the radio in country Q. That's from country Q to country Y is more than 10%. No, but again, it's more than 10% of the cost. But we're also we're trying to do everything relative to the value of country Y, not relative to the value of country Q. So that's going to be off anyway. So we don't know that, but even if it's more than 10% is the real problem here. So that's actually opposite to what we want, basically. And then it takes 10% less time to manufacture. The time is not relevant, it's the cost here. We don't care about the time. So that's definitely going to be C as your answer. Okay, let's look at this next one. So exposure to certain chemicals commonly used. Let me just, I'll blow that out, make it easier to see. Exposure to certain chemicals commonly used in elementary schools as cleaners or pesticides. That causes allergic reactions in some children. Okay, so elementary school nurses report that the proportion of school children sent to them for treatment to those chemicals has increased significantly in the past 10 years, okay? So either, for instance, school children have been exposed to greater quantities of the chemicals, or they're more sensitive to them than school children were 10 years ago. So what we're looking for, an assumption on which the argument depends. So this is something that would have to be true in order for the argument to work. So quite often, I think what you're looking for in a case like this is an alternative explanation, basically. So if we can eliminate an alternative explanation, then that would be a good thing for us to frame as our assumption here. So what we're looking at, so it says either, for instance, school children have been exposed to greater quantities, or they're more sensitive to them than children were 10 years ago. The problem that we would face here is that there were other things that could that could be behind having more children sent to the nurse. So if it's as simple as it's culture, basically, the nurses 10 years ago would have said, just shut up and stay in your seat when a kid complained about allergies. Whereas now the nurses are like, oh, you poor baby, go see the nurse. You know, so if there's a cultural shift where the children are being sent to the nurse more frequently, just because they're more likely to be sent, not because, you know, they could have had all of those allergic reactions and not been sent 10 years ago, whereas they're having the allergic reactions and being sent now. Or, you know, the teachers are just more likely to send children to the nurse in general. So realistically, it's just coming back, the teacher's motivation is not really the issue, it's just about the likelihood that a student would be sent to a teacher, okay? So what you're looking at here, basically, the number of nurses employed has not decreased, so that's not going to increase, or I mean, if anything, it's opposite really, because you know, you decrease the number of nurses, then you're increasing the proportion of students, because you're just dividing the number of students by the number of nurses, basically. So no, that's going to be opposite. Children who are allergic are no more likely than other children to have allergies to other substances. Definitely out of scope. We don't care. Children who have allergic reactions are not more likely to be sent to a school nurse. That is a winner. That is your answer. The chemicals are not commonly used as cleaners in houses and apartment buildings. This is a maybe, you know, if you think about it. I mean, I'm sure C's right, but this one, you would have to assume that these children, maybe they're getting the chemicals, or the chemical exposure at home instead of at school. That's why they're being sent to the nurse. But that's still, again, it's a leap, right? You're having to add, well, if we were to think that maybe they were getting it at home, then maybe I could make that work. As soon as you start talking like that, you know that's not the right answer. The C gives you a solid mathematical reason. It's just a higher percentage. We don't know why, but a higher percentage are going to be sent. They're just more likely to be sent to the nurse in the first place. Children attending elementary school do not make up a larger proportion of residents' population. Again, residents' total population versus the number of children, it just doesn't make any sense. That has nothing to do with the argument itself, so that's out of scope. I don't know why I said OSS here, it's OOS. Out of scope. Okay, let's do a couple more here. All right, I'm going to zoom out here. So, although the discount stores in Cornwall's Central Shopping District are expected to close within 5 years as a result of competition from a spend less discount department store, fine. The discount stores are expected to close because of spend less, okay? And the locations will not stay vacant for long. This is our conclusion, right? So in the 5 years since the opening of Colson's, a non-discount department store, okay, so non-discount here, a new store is opened at every location. All right, fine. So basically you had a bunch of stores. Colson's came in, destroyed all the non-discount stores, and then there were empty storefronts. Something has come in and filled those storefronts. We don't know what that is, but something has come and filled those storefronts. Now, what their argument is saying is, well, because Colson's killed all the non-discount stores and then something came and took their place, that when Spend Less kills all the discount stores, something will take that thing's place, which is not necessarily true. So there's a problem there. So we're saying, which of the following most seriously weakens the argument? Well, just because it's true for a non-discount store does not mean it's true for a discount store, okay? So we can expect the discount stores to go away. That's kind of a given in this argument. But the question is, well, what do we do after that? Like, what is going to happen if all of the discount stores go away? What could replace the discount stores? Which we just don't know, basically. But it's going to be about, will these storefronts get replaced, basically, with a new store? Okay, so A, many customers of Colson's are expected to do less shopping there than they did before the spend. It's not about shopping at Colson's versus spend less. They're two different things. Done it again. OOS. They're two different types of stores. The discount stores and non-discount stores, you wouldn't go to them for the same things, most likely, or the same people wouldn't go to them. Increasingly, the stores that have opened have been discount stores. This is looking more promising because this is about the distinction between discount and non-discount, okay? C, at present, the Central Shopping District has had as many stores operating in it as ever. Yes, but Spend Less hasn't opened. So once Spend Less opens, there might be a hell of a lot fewer. So that is definitely going to be, I would say, actually, I don't even know what you say. It's kind of ludicrous. I'll call it a leap. Why not? Because then you'd have to say, well, because there's a lot of stores now, there will soon be a lot of stores again. I don't know. But whatever it is, it's not the right answer. So now, over the course of the next 5 years, it's expected that Growville's population will grow. Okay, but the population has nothing to do with whether the storefronts have stores in them, right? So that's out of scope. Many stores in the Central Shopping District sell types of merchandise not available at Spend Less or Colson's. Yeah, but these are not part of the argument because the only thing that matters is the stores that are going to get removed by Spend Less, basically. So that's completely out of scope. So it has to be B by elimination. So let's just go back and see how B fits in. The stores that have opened since Colson's opened have been discount stores, right? So Colson's removes the non-discount stores. Those storefronts get filled up by discount stores. Then Spend Less removes the discount stores. But the problem is, what goes below a discount store? It may be, I don't know, some kind of ultra discount store. Who knows? But more likely, it's going to be just an empty storefront. But the point is, we just don't know. We can say that, all right, the discount stores filled the spot of the non-discount stores. We know that from the past, but we have nothing to guide us as to what's going to happen when the discount stores all disappear. So the simple fact of the matter is we don't have an answer for this, and that's going to weaken the argument. All right, so Kale has more nutritional value than spinach. All right, so this is a good one just to write this out. So kale is more than spinach. Collard greens have more nutritional value than lettuce. It follows that kale has more nutritional value than lettuce. Okay, the it follows, that's a conclusion. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to get an extra piece of information that's going to make this argument work, basically from that step to that step to that step. So anything of introducing the argument makes the argument logically correct. Collard greens have more nutritional value than kale. So what you're doing is you're saying, okay, so collard greens is more than kale. So if collard greens is more than kale, it follows kale has more nutritional value than lettuce. No, the problem is, because what that would tell us is that collard greens is more than kale. We could easily have it be like this, or we could have it be equal here. So that's not telling us that it's directly going to be more. So that, most likely that's going to be your answer, actually, A. Well, let's just try the other ones and see if they fit in. I'll put a question mark on that. Spinach has more nutritional value than lettuce. Okay, well, spinach is more than lettuce and kale is more than spinach, so that one definitely works. Okay, spinach has more nutritional value than collard greens, so spinach would go over here. Spinach is above collard greens, more than lettuce, fine. Spinach and collard greens is the same, so spinach equals collard greens, both greater than lettuce, great. Kale and collard greens have the same nutritional value, and that's both greater than lettuce, so yes, it is definitely going to be A there. All right, so thanks for watching, and I hope you found this useful. Don't forget to check out the Arithmetic Shortcuts guide. That's in the description, and I'll see you again tomorrow or sometime soon.